Welcome to episode 10 of FCLE Seminar, the Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast. I'm your host, Mercedes Musto. The FCLE podcast is where we review American history to help you prepare for the Florida Civic Literacy Exam. Today, we're taking a look at a very timely landmark Supreme Court case called Baker v. Carr, 1962. This is all based on the guide put together by the Florida Department of Education. I've got the links to the study stuff in the show notes, so check those out. And don't forget to comment, like, or subscribe to our podcast at FCLE Seminar on YouTube. Great. Let's get started. Landmark Supreme Court case number 9, Baker v. Carr, 1962. Case background. So let's set the stage here. Back in the 1900s, actually 1962, Tennessee was facing a serious problem. Its state constitution required that state legislature to reapportion itself every 10 years to reflect population changes. However, the last reapportionment had taken place in 1901. Oh gosh, that's like a 60-year gap of no reapportionment. Right. But I'm not really sure what apportionment means. So now what? Oh, teachable moment here. Apportionment means like how to divide and distribute things. So a prime example of this is the population and the representation in the House of Representatives that represents 50 states. So apportionment in the process of distributing means that among the 50 states, there are 435 seats in the House of Representatives, and this is all based on the population of those states. And in this case, reapportionment means that in 1962, Tennessee had not updated its legislative districts since 1901 and was supposed to reapportion itself every 10 years to reflect those population changes. So there you go. As a result of this whole thing, there were rural areas with smaller populations were overrepresented, and urban areas, which were growing rapidly, those were underrepresented in state legislature. But does that sound right? I mean, why? Well, see, if a rural area has 100 people in it and an urban area has 1,000 people in it, and they each get one representative representing one vote, then the rural area of 100 has more influence than the urban area of 1,000. Got it? Good. Okay. Now, Charles Baker, a Tennessee resident, challenged this inequality in the court. He argued that the state's failure to reapportion its legislative districts violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. This clause guarantees equal protection under the laws to all its citizens. Baker claimed that every citizen's vote should count equally, regardless of where they lived. This idea paved the way for that principle, one person, one vote. The court's decision. This court involved a seemingly simple question. Should federal courts have the power to intervene in state legislative apportionment? Well, traditionally, such issues had been considered like political questions beyond the scope of judicial review. And all in all, the implications of the court's decision were far-reaching. This case eventually made its way to the Supreme Court, where the key question again was whether or not it had the power to intervene in state legislative apportionment. So now, this was a groundbreaking decision. The Supreme Court ruled that legislative apportionment was, in fact, a justiciable issue. This means that federal courts could intervene to ensure that state legislative districts were drawn fairly. The Baker versus Carr decision had a profound impact on American politics. It led to a wave of redistricting cases across the country as courts were now empowered to enforce the principle of one person, one vote. Ultimately, this brought a balance of political power between rural and urban areas, reflecting the changing demographics of the nation. The constitutional principle. We're looking at the 14th Amendment here. Now, remember that states, quote, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. And here's the big one. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. End quote. Interpretation. Baker versus Carr was a crucial case in American constitutional law. It established the principle that federal courts can play a vital role in ensuring fair representation in state legislatures. By doing so, continues the participation in the balance of powers between the state and the federal government for the preservation of individual rights and liberty. Not only are we expanding our vocabulary here, apportionment, reapportionment, but we are also right on time with a landmark Supreme Court case connected to voters and the importance of that one person, one vote. Hey, that's you, boss. Now get out there and vote. Let's review. Here are the key takeaways in the landmark Supreme Court case, Baker versus Carr. Number 1, reapportionment as a justiciable issue. The Supreme Court ruled that the legislative reapportionment, previously considered a political question, is indeed a justiciable issue. This means that federal courts can intervene in cases involving unfair districting. Number 2, equal protection clause. The court's decision was based on the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment, which guarantees equal protection of the laws to all citizens. And number 3, one person, one vote. The ruling effectively paved the way for the principle of one person, one vote, meaning that legislative districts should be drawn to represent their changing populations equally. Hey, thanks for listening. Join us again on FCLE Seminar, a Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast, so you can start studying for your test. The important thing is to start studying and start studying today. Well, hey, what are you waiting for? Like, subscribe, and leave your questions or comments for us on FCLE Seminar at YouTube, or hit me up on Spotify, Apple, or any of your favorite podcast players. This podcast is listener supported. Contributions can be made via the listener support link on Spotify, or you can buy me a coffee via the link in the show notes. This is your host, Mercedes Musto. Join me again on FCLE Seminar, a Florida Civic Literacy Exam podcast, so you can pass the FCLE.